Tonight, health experts warn the coronavirus may lead to strokes in young and middle-aged adults, even if they have mild symptoms. I spoke with the neurologist at Desert Regional Medical Center, Dr. Kevin Attenhofer. Dr. Attenhofer, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
The coronavirus appears to be causing strokes in younger people, people in their 30s and 40s who are not terribly ill. What can you tell us about that?
Well, there was a recent study that comes out of Mount Sinai in New York and their experience, and it was an observational study. They basically woke up one morning and said, wow, over the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of patients that were young who had strokes, and they published it. And it was a series of 5 patients ranging from their mid-20s to, I believe, upper 40s who had stroke. 3 of them, I believe, had symptoms of coronavirus first and had tested positive and then had stroke. And then 2 patients presented with stroke and then were tested for coronavirus after the fact and tested positive. It's not unheard of for us to see stroke associated with viruses. A common one is varicella virus or chickenpox. What happens, or what we think happens, and it's all what we think because this is a novel virus, but what we think and what we see is that the virus causes a reaction in the body that increases our what we call acute phase reactants. So the body's response to the virus is to attack it. And in doing so, one of the things that it does is it becomes a procoagulable state, which means the blood becomes very thick. The blood becomes very pro-clot. And so we see clots not only in the brain, but elsewhere. We've seen reports of a lot of pulmonary clots and clots in the legs. That's compounded again by our treatments. A lot of these patients with coronavirus end up on ventilators. They end up in the hospital and they're not moving around. And so just in the course of medical treatment, our medical treatments do have unintended consequences, and stroke can be a consequence of that. So yes, coronavirus is associated with stroke, but so are many other viruses. And I don't think that purely the association with stroke should raise a lot of concern. Stroke in young patients is something we've seen for years. The key point is that there's treatment for stroke, regardless of the cause. There's treatment that we can administer, that all of the hospitals in the Coachella Valley can administer stroke treatment. And so the worst thing that could happen is to be afraid of the symptoms and to stay at home. Just because you're afraid of the coronavirus, yes, that's a valid fear, and I understand that fear. But we have trained professionals all across the board, EMS, ER, neurology, here at our hospital, and I know at the other hospitals in the Coachella Valley, who are ready to take care of you, to keep you safe from coronavirus and to make you better from your stroke.
In terms of the pandemic, how are things right now at Desert Regional?
You know, I think at Desert Regional, we've been prepared. I think we've been ahead of the game since this began. Even before we started having coronavirus patients, we started making preparations. All the way back into February, I was getting emails about the work that the administration was doing to open up new units, to transform new units. I read and talk to my physician friends on the East Coast who have been absolutely swamped with the coronavirus surge. That has not been my day-to-day experience at Desert Regional. I have never felt that there's been an issue with PPE at our hospital. I've never felt that there's been an issue of patients not having a place to go or a safe place to go. When I talk with the nurses, they are in good spirits. They are excited about taking care of patients. I think the general feeling amongst the staff is that coronavirus is here, but we're prepared for it. We can deal with it, and we're going to beat it, and we have so far.
Well, then let me ask you, the county and state, they're talking about easing the restrictions. Do you believe we're ready?
Well, that's probably a higher pay grade question than I'm really qualified to answer. But in my anecdotal experience, I think with appropriate planning and prudent measures, I think it is time to at least start having that discussion.
Dr. Attenhofer, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.